From A to Z, it's plain to see. This podcast is about people in my industry. Writers, designers, social media managers. Don't forget the data miners. Ep4 find out who they are and how they made it this far. This is the From A to Z podcast.
Welcome back. This is the From A to Z podcast. Today's guest is a titan in the advertising industry. He is a philanthropist and author, chief creative officer of the number one rated agency. And that is Mr. Pepe Marais. Thank you so much for joining me, Pepe.
Okay, thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much for joining me. So the show is called From A to Z, and the point is to speak to advertising pros like yourself about their upbringing, how they got into the industry, and everything in between and where you are now. So if we can start right at the beginning, please can you tell us a bit about yourself and your upbringing, Pepe?
So I was born in 1968, grew up in an Afrikaans home in the old South Africa. Wasn't very good at school, but I loved mathematics, so I was very good at maths. I matriculated. I went to the army for 2 years, and then I was going to study civil engineering. Unfortunately, met a graphic designer on the border of what was then Southwest Africa, Namibia today, and Angola. And just fell in love with what I saw, and then found in quite a haste, found a art school in Cape Town where I studied for 3 years, got a diploma in graphic art. The first year was more fine art based drawing, and it turned out that I had a very latent talent for conceptual thinking and design, and then hence I ended up in advertising, because once I found that love for art, I discovered advertising as an industry which I never knew existed. So I entered the industry in 1990. So what's that now? 30 years ago. And then just started working myself up the industry.
Yeah, so now for someone who makes such well thought out and insight driven led ideas and campaigns such as yourself, I would like to know some of the most memorable ads from your past, from your childhood that you remember, maybe on a road trip somewhere, or you heard on the radio or a billboard that you might have driven past.
It's so interesting when you look back at advertising from those days, you realize how segregated our country was. You wouldn't even realize, but if you now back to back watch advertising, you can just see how it changed since the mid-90s. But back then, I actually remember Cremora. It's not inside, it's on top, as a commercial. I also remember Have a Ding Dong Day Dairy Bell. So it seems back in the 80s, those jingles were very powerful. But there were also back then only 1 or 2 TV stations, not like hundreds that we've got now, access to everything, and Netflix and Showmax and everything that goes with it, streaming devices. And then must have been also the late 80s, I remember the VW Golf GTI. I think there was like a jet in it or something. Those were like from those years before I got into advertising, what I remember. But then the 90s, with the turn of our country, 94, 95, there was some magnificent advertising coming from this country. The BMW mouse. Most of the advertising back then was actually coming from Hunter Scaris. So they were probably one of the best agencies in the world on local shores. So the industry was really powerful. There is so many. If I think of the 90s, I can mention so many ads. I can mention, I think it was like a national color copy with a little boy handing out love notes. Just a lot of BMW work comes to mind. Just beautiful, beautiful work. I think Alan Gray probably happened in the 2000s, that decade from 2000 to 2010. And then slowly over the years, probably a bit of a decline or demise of the caliber of our product in our country.
So you said that we went through a golden age and then we kind of went through a big dip.
Yeah, we went through. I think so. I mean, I suppose it's quite a controversial statement, but I do think if we want to address it, we have to start looking at the facts. I mean, I don't know how many people can recall really great communication from our market at the moment. There's a few, but not many.
Now, speaking of great work, which is what Joe Public does, I'd like to go to the beginning of Joe Public, yourself and your co-founder Gareth Leck. Please tell us a bit more about the what was happening around the time when you started it. How old is the business, and maybe some of the challenges that you faced along the way.
Yeah, so originally we were actually three founders. When I discovered art back in those early days, and it's amazing how much self-confidence I gained when I suddenly discovered I'm good at something.
Yeah.
Which to me is very interesting, just in terms of human development and self-confidence. The importance of finding something that you're really latently good at and really enjoy and love. Does so much for self-esteem and self-confidence. So I put a stake in the ground that I wanted to work for myself. I always worked for my own income from the age of 12. So I suppose my own business was the imperative for myself. But in our industry, you always need the business partner. So as a creative person, we have in our businesses the creative director, and then you've got the managing director. And the one creates or manages the product, and the other one manages the services and probably the back end of the agency, the financial side. And I knew I needed a partner, so I went looking for a partner, and through a third party who also started the business with us, we found Gareth Leck, who at that stage was a very young suit from Jupiter Drawing Room in Cape Town, and he obviously had his own entrepreneurial ambitions, and he jumped at the opportunity. And so we both jumped in with our third partner. The third partner left within the first 3 years, went to America, and Gareth and myself continued the journey. But it's been an exceptional journey of extremely, extremely hard work and a lot of energy. People, they look at where we are today, and everyone, it's a famous saying, it says it takes 17 years to become an overnight success. So I think a lot of young entrepreneurs want to be rich quick, and they want to taste success quickly. And they don't realize that it can take you 20 years to start tasting success, not even really experiencing it.
It's that 10,000 hours saying. Yeah, even more than that. As you said, you started at 12 years old, running your own businesses and I guess getting your own money, which is always awesome. But I'd like to know where that comes from. Was that business acumen instilled in you, or did you was it a natural born talent, like you say?
No, it was forced by circumstances. So, and hence, I actually, when you look back at circumstances, Steve Jobs famously said, when you look back, you connect the dots. So I'm quoting him, but I've also experienced that wisdom myself, or his wisdom I've felt in my experience, because my mother was a single mother with 3 children. So there wasn't a means, even by my sort of white privileged old South African standards, there were no means in my house to get anything. So if I wanted anything, the things that my friends had, I had to go and work to earn money to buy those things. My mum couldn't afford it. So she did afford me a roof over my head in a flat, a little semi-attached house next to a railroad. So we had a good solid bricks and mortar house. So by no means the challenges of the majority of South Africa, but still I worked because I was forced to work. In fact, I wasn't forced. It was my own initiative. I went, well, if I can't have a bicycle, I'll go and work and I'll buy a bicycle. If I don't have a motorbike, I'll go and work and I'll buy myself a motorbike. But it was forced by circumstances. I don't know. I just don't know if if we had all the means in our house, I maybe would have just been a child and played. But I worked 7 days a week from the age of 12, mostly.
Yeah. Now, in your book, your 2020 book, 20 Habits That Break Habits, I really like the way you put, or you take out the negative connotation from the word habit. And you speak about how a habit can limit or liberate you. At the end of the day, how I took it, at the end of the day, we're all humans and we all, go through things and go through the motions, and we use tactics to help us, I guess, cope. But if people haven't read the book yet, please can you give us a couple of insights or tidbits that we should take away from that, and also the background of how you came up with the book and the title.
Okay. So the first thing behind both the books that I wrote is purpose. So I became very purpose-driven in 2007, and it turned my life around radically. I mean, I had a great life before that, lots of fun, but I wasn't manifesting any of my dreams. And hence I discovered purpose. And again, I suppose was forced upon me through business bankruptcy, because Joe Public hit a brick wall in 2006, 2007. And that was quite I had to really take a tough look at myself and my behavior and what do I want in life, and not living from weekend to weekend, and actually have more of a plan and start planning for my own future, plan for 25 years, not just for a month ahead. Because as people, we don't have a plan. We just work and think everything will fall in place. And then we suddenly blink and we're 65 and we can't retire because we haven't saved anything and we haven't planned for anything. So I became purpose-based, purpose-driven, purpose-inspired in 2007. So that's behind my books. I write my books to inspire the best in other people.
The Growing Greatness, your book Growing Greatness, which what I took from that one was how important it is to work on the internal first in order for you to see the greatness coming out externally. Now that is very, very important. It takes self-knowledge and introspection, which is a journey of that we go through the whole of our lives, right? So you say that you kind of took that, started taking that journey in 2007.
Yeah, and you're quite right. It's all about introspection, but I do find as human beings, we don't take responsibility. So we spend a lot of time blaming others, but we never look within ourselves. And it's very easy for me to blame my situation or my alcoholic father, but I've decided not to do that and to rather step into responsibility and leadership and just lead my own life the way I define it. So yeah, it's introspection. And I suppose out of that came the book on habits, because it's our habits that actually play a critical role in what we achieve in life. And, I didn't call them good or bad habits because I loved drinking and I loved smoking. I didn't go and judge them as bad habits.
Yeah.
But they were not liberating my life. They were limiting my life. So I speak to limiting and liberating habits. The fact that we have a lot of habits in life that limits us. And if you want to taste success, first change your habits to liberating habits.
Yeah. Now, speaking of liberation and TVCs, which kind of were pulled off TV, there was a huge ad from Chicken Lick and the Legend of Big John, which struck the country with a big bang, ruffled a few feathers. A lot of people really enjoyed it, but I guess that one person made a complaint and got it pulled off of TV. Can you please give us a bit of background of what happened there?
Yeah, so interestingly, the reason why it was pulled off was it was said to make a mockery of colonization, when in the creative process of that commercial, that didn't come up once. We've got a very strict internal review system that includes strategists, account managers, the business side of the business, not just a bunch of creative people coming up with ads. There's big thinking behind a piece of communication.
Lots of insights, lots and lots of insights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Chicken Licken brand, as a proudly South African entrepreneurial success story, our endeavors with our clients communication is, yes, to sell their product, but secondly, use the communication to inspire South Africans to see how great we really are as a nation. So in a way, I mean, isn't it quite tiring that we always have to listen to the stories from abroad? You know, and it goes back as far as Jan van Riebeeck, you know. But what about all the American stories? We always have to hear the big stories about abroad, and we never tell our own big stories. So all we wanted to do is tell a big story about Big John, who discovered Europe. That's the only story. He doesn't, he calls it Europe as a joke, but by no means does he go, and the communication doesn't go further and show that he colonizes and forces people out of their land and make them believe his religion and beliefs and culture. None of that. He just explored it. So that was completely taken out of context. And I think the lens of colonization was put onto it through the ARB when they ruled against it. Because, I mean, that was a big budget commercial with big spend behind it before it got pulled. And of the thousands of comments of people who loved it, not one person did not like it. And not one person did refer to colonization. And it was only when one person out of 60 million complained that the lens of colonization was put onto the work. So in my view, that as a case study shows the lack of critical thinking that exists when these rulings are made and when these calls are made, and the short-sightedness thereof, because the commercial viability and the cost of that commercial and the sales that it drives and the jobs that it creates and the economic contribution to the South African economy versus one complainant that doesn't even pitch up for the court case. Doesn't even pitch up.
Man.
To me, is a actual, it turns the importance of a controlling body, because I'm not saying it's not important. An advertising regulatory board is critical. We need to self-manage what we do. But it makes a mockery out of the system when you go and make a bad ruling like that. Completely just a ridiculous learning. And that's a very one-sided view, one could say. But we spent R250,000 researching for evidence to prove that the majority of people, in fact 96%, did not find it offensive. And the 4% that said it could be seen as offensive only referred to it because it was highlighted by the sort of the news around it, because it created a lot of talkability. So yes, a very interesting case. I will still one day see, sort of look back and see why did that happen, because I vehemently opposed that decision. I actually think it is completely, it ridicules the system.
Yeah. And I just to add on to that, I was also personally kind of hurt by that. Like you say, the agency spends a lot of money researching, a lot of time putting the work together. And I was actually working at Joe Public at the time as a social media manager. And while the script was being worked on and everything, there was no speak of or thought of any, going that way in the way that one person took it. Other than the financial, implications that the company faced, and personally, I mean, a lot of awards were obviously forfeited. But personally speaking, because I was a person on the channels actually at that time, some people don't know, but there wasn't one comment that was negative, other than the complaint that went through, and I guess at the end won. So what do we take from this, Pepe?
I just want to pick up on something you said. The awards is a byproduct. The biggest thing that was a stuff up to me is the damage to the client's pocket. The brand entrusts us to do communication that works. And who knows? I mean, for all I know, that one person could be someone from KFC.
Yeah.
So I suppose the learning, and this is something we are taking forward, definitely taking forward, is there needs to be regulations that are adhered to. I do question in a democracy how the view of one person overrules the view of thousands.
Yeah.
that is undemocratic. So I think the ACA needs to look at this matter, and we shouldn't let it go, and we should really start becoming consistent with our rulings, and really question whether you can pull a piece of communication based on one person's opinion, because that's a very dangerous place to be. Like, you could very quickly see if you're offensive with a piece of communication and you get a high level of feedback that it's offensive, that I think is when someone should intervene. But to intervene on behalf of one person who we don't know exactly who that person is, who did not show up at any of the rulings, yeah, it fascinates me to this day. Yeah. But time will tell.
Time will tell. And speaking of awards, but in a more positive light, the Lurie rankings came out about a week ago, and Joe Public absolutely stole the show, once again winning the number 1 ranking for agency in South Africa. Is it South Africa and EMEA, or is it South Africa? I think it's
South Africa, Africa, and Middle East.
Okay, cool. Yeah, SA and Mia. Yeah. Not only did Joe Public scoop the number 1 ranking, but a host or a long list of number 1s individually, such as I want to name some of these people. First person was Tepo Tumahole, number 1 copywriter. Claudia Potter, number 1 creative director. Zamani Ngobani, number 1 art director, and there are a whole lot more number 1s and other rankings and loads of individual awards. As the co-founder of the company, how proud do you feel not only seeing the company shine but the individuals?
Yeah, so look, it's always I'm very conscious. Of course, I'm proud. You know, I'll be lying if I say I'm not proud, but I don't feel that sense of pride. I feel a sense of gratitude, because the business is based on purpose. So it exists to grow our people. And the more we grow our people, the better our service to our clients, the more we can assist in the growth of our clients. And the more we do that at a high level of excellence, collectively we contribute to the growth of our country through our taxes, through job creation, through supporting 2 township schools, through 1 school at a time. So it's an ecosystem that's linked to growth. So what makes me the proudest, if we speak about proud, is to see the rise of people who have never done work of that caliber, which to me also shows human potential, and to me also it shows like diversity. So if you look across those lists, there's a lot of our team on those lists now, and it's starting to really show a diverse reflection of what we're trying to create. So yeah, I'm proud on the one side, but I'm grateful for the opportunity that we can do this within our business.
Might be a tough one, but is there a piece of content or an ad from another agency that stands out to you? Could be local, international, could be a Super Bowl ad or anything like that.
Look, I mean, if I start, it's always difficult to speak of other brands, although I don't mind. But I can't speak in the absence of actually crediting brands like Nedbank, Chicken Licken, SA Breweries, who don't just pay us anymore. They actually demand us to do great work. And when you have clients that starts to demand great work, that's critical to great work. Great work doesn't just happen because you think you've got a great agency. It happens because you've got a great client. So any other piece that I might mention, let me just think about that for a second. I'm trying to really think local work that stands out. There's so little of it. It's quite frightening. And of course, I'm now within my own space. But it is quite frightening when it's difficult to find great work, which to me is the indictment on our industry. But then at the same time, I think globally the last year has been tough. And we haven't really, Cannes was cancelled last year, so we don't have our normal update of global best to the same level. We don't really follow one show at DNAD as much as Cannes, so that'll probably come to our consciousness. If I think outside of the last year, if I think globally, I'm always inspired by Droga 5's work. If I look at what they did for Under Armour against Nike, I'm very inspired by, Nike. If I think Colin Kaepernick, The campaign Nike did with the collar to knee.
Very powerful.
The way
Yeah.
they back athletes, super powerful. That's the work I aspire to, that level of work. You know, the kind of work that gets consumer response that's so polarized. Some people burning their Nike shoes because they're so angered by the campaign, and then other people en masse supporting the brand and then seeing the share price rocketing off the back of an ad campaign. I would say that's the piece of work that I probably aspire to the most personally. That piece really moved me, and also the brand had a voice in a place where they have a right to have a voice, because they've always backed, you know, even when they backed Tiger through everything that he went through. So they deserve the right to turn that action of Colin Kaepernick into a campaign. And then when I think locally, unfortunately, the first piece of communication that comes up always goes back to the old Alan Gray Beautifuls and the BMW Mouse. You know, I haven't found that level of prolific work yet to come out of our country. You know, a beautiful piece of work that I loved, but unfortunately it wasn't for a paying client. But probably my most favorite piece of work out of South Africa, outside of Joe Public, would be Breaking Ballet by Hunter Scaris. You know, because it was a big digital integrated, very smart, very responsive, just a beautiful piece of work. And I'd love to see more of that caliber of work done for paying clients.
Yeah. Just to wrap up, I think we might be running out of time. Now, you're a family man, you're a very successful businessman. You went out there and you achieved your goal. You're a titan in your industry. You inspire so many people. But I'd like to know how you keep your number one ranking at home. I know that you've been with your partner since you're 16 years old. You have a son. Please tell us how you manage to balance that.
I suppose, okay, there's two questions. The first one is just the balance of family and business, you know, between my two partners, my life partner, my wife of 35 years, and my business partner, and probably my husband of 22 years. The truth of the matter is when you're living your true passion. So I'm living my passion of advertising, and I'm living my calling of being a purpose advocate. So I'm living my passion and my calling. So there's no difference between work and life. It's one thing. You know, I don't have a work life and a private life, you know, and a family life. I've got one life. And I live that with the same level of energy and commitment and passion. And then your other question is, how do you remain number one? You remain number one by realizing that you're nowhere. You know, you don't rest on your laurels, because growth, you know, a tree doesn't stop growing. Growth demands constant evolution, constant improvement. And I think, yes, we might be top of our game on local shores, but at a macro level, the South African ad industry is minuscule. So we wouldn't want to just be a big fish in a small pond. We'd like to participate at a global level in terms of the caliber we do, without losing our local relevance to our consumers.
Now, I think that we've taken it from A to Z. We've heard about your upbringing, the beginning of Joe Public, how you feel about what's happening in the ad industry in South Africa today. Do you have any final last words for the From A to Z listeners, whether they're watching or listening to this on their favorite streaming platform?
Yeah, I would say take responsibility for your creativity. It's quite a big question. So you see, I'm getting a frog in my throat.
I got you there.
But no, take responsibility for your creativity. You know, I believe we might not be born into equal situation. You know, that's just the way of life. We're not all born into equal situation. We're born very unequal. But within us, we have equal potential. And I think when you step into that responsibility of your potential, then life starts happening for you. And there's so much fabrication of untruths. You know, you look on the social platform, like a tweet, someone's opinion gets taken as the truth. You know, often we're not even conscious of exactly the facts. You know, how many people do we really have in this country? What percentage is every single class? What income exactly goes where? We don't know any of this data, but we have these really big fleeting opinions. And I find the only thing to counter it with is creativity, because you can control creativity. You can see that it's the truth because you're making something. So I would invite anyone who's listening to step out of the social noise of untruth and step into yourself, step into your own responsibility as a creative being, and start creating, because that's all you can control, is your own creativity.
Wow, powerful. All you can control is your own creativity. Take it in your own hands. This has been From A to Z with Pepe Marais, Chief Creative Officer of Joe Public. Thank you so much for joining me, Pepe.
Thanks, Figure. Lucky to see you, man. Awesome.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Everybody out there, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share this so it goes boom. From A to Z to the world, we out.
Designers, social media managers, don't forget the data miners. Ep4 find out who they are and how they made it this far. From A to Z, talk about your family, talk about the goals you reach, talk about the plans you see. Let's get it. Welcome aboard. I'm your host, PK Mwini, and this is the From A to Z podcast.